everyone. Sorry I didn't post yesterday, but my son got injured in a football game, and so we had to see if he was okay, and he's okay. He just has to take some time off, which he's kind of upset about, his teammates are kind of upset about, but all is good, so I apologize. So my last video I ended with going to see an oncologist and a radiologist, and so I'm going to back up a little bit. In the time from April until I had my surgeries, I really had to up my game as far as my nutrition and stuff went. And so even though I didn't know I had cancer at one point, I just had to tell myself, you know what, even though I just kind of blew it off and didn't think about it, it still was in my mind. And so I was like, you know what, regardless if I have cancer or not, I just have to live my life as if I do. And so I already worked out really hard. My nutrition, I ate really well. And so I took all the right vitamins I was supposed to take. And so about 20-some years ago, I had this mentor, and he taught me how to run heavy equipment. And which I ran heavy equipment for years and years and years, which a lot of people didn't know that. Absolutely loved it. And so anyways, this mentor that I had told me about this herb, and it's called bloodroot. And so he was telling me about all the healing properties of this root. And he had planted a seed in me, which he did for a reason, because God knew I was going to need that little seed later on in life. And so when I had gotten sick, or not got sick, but when I had found the cancer, and I upped my nutrition as if I was living my life as if though I had cancer, which that's how we should all live actually every day of our life, as if we had cancer, regardless if we did or not. I started researching more about this herb that he had told me about years and years ago. And so, and if you research, a lot of times when in your research, you'll find that they'll say that this root is actually toxic to humans. Well, that's not true. That's just their way of, I would say, our FDA and our USDA and all of that, and that monitors our herbs, our food and stuff. Sometimes they'll say stuff like that to prevent us from actually taking stuff that's actually going to help us or prevent certain diseases or illnesses. And so in my process, I had researched this and actually found a place where I could buy it. So I actually started taking this prior to my surgeries, prior to me finding out I had cancer. And so for a lot of you that know, your lymphatic system is almost like part of your filtering system. And so when your body gets really toxic and it can't disperse of the toxins fast enough in your body, they'll start sitting in your lymphatic system. And so that's why you hear when people get cancer, a lot of times it goes into the lymph nodes. Well, I believe, and this is just my theory, I believe that's because your immune system is fighting so hard to get rid of these toxins in your body, which is cancer. And like I said before, I'll talk to you more in other videos about cancer and what it is. And on top of, is trying to fight off from the daily stuff that we stick in our bodies, which is toxic. So your body gets backed up. So next thing you know, your lymphatic system is being attacked. And so bloodroot is a really good herb that you take that actually helps fight cancer, but it also helps drain your lymphatic system. And so you guys need to remember that. So I started taking bloodroot, and then I know when you guys were growing up, during the holidays, you guys would see mistletoe hanging around. And I don't know about you guys, but I know, like, my parents would always say, don't touch the mistletoe, it's poisonous, or don't put the mistletoe in your mouth, it's poisonous. Another fallacy. I actually started taking mistletoe root in powder form. I would put it in capsules. I also started taking colloidal silver, which is a huge thing for helping with cancer. I started doing food grade hydrogen peroxide in purified water. I started drinking that every day. I started doing apricot seeds, which they're trying to pull off the market. Our FDA is actually trying to pull it off the market because it's a huge thing that helps with inflammation and helps with cancer. And I also started doing, we ordered these vitamins from one of my husband's friends who's a scientist. They actually came from Japan, and they are made from fermented rice stalk. So here I was on this huge regimen already, and so then I just added to it. Okay, so we'll catch up now. So I go through my procedures and everything, and it's crazy too is that God works in mysterious ways. So during this process of all of this, you have to understand, I don't have insurance. Everything that has happened to me has literally been paid out of pocket, and it's been paid out of pocket by money that God has provided. Because if anybody knows about surgeries and anybody has gone through chemo and radiation, it is very expensive to get sick. And so, mind you, all my surgeries, everything that's happened has been paid out of pocket. And so there was at one point during this process, my sister had came up and visited us, and I was in relentless prayer every single day, every single day. God's like, Angie, this is a huge leap of faith for you. Something that I struggle with a lot of times because we're human, and because we're all about touching, feeling, seeing, it's hard for us to trust in the unknown. It's hard for us to give up all of that trust that we have because we're not physically seeing something. So this whole time I'm praying, and God is telling me, Angela, you just have to keep faith. And so faith is a gift I did not acquire, which faith is God-given, but we all have gifts. God gives us all gifts. You know, some of us have the gift of diplomacy, which I do not have. My sister has diplomacy. God gives us the gift of discernment, the gift of prophecy, which prophecy isn't that you can see into the future, but you sense things. And that is one of the gifts I have, the gifts of discernment. I'm very black and white. I call a spade a spade. And so the gift of faith was something that I have, but it's not one of those things that I could tell you that I had strongly. So this is a huge testimony for me as far as faith is concerned, because I literally have God telling me, Angela, I need you to step on the edge of that cliff, and I need you to jump and trust that I'm going to catch you. So this was a huge test. Here I had been preaching about God. Here I have been talking about his natural cures. And here now I am literally standing here with cancer and having to put my words to work, or having to prove what I've been saying. Now I'm being put to the test. And so my sister comes up and visits, and this is pre-surgery. Sorry, I keep bouncing around, but my head goes like 90 miles an hour. So my sister comes up and visits, and so she's trying to help me apply for insurances. She's trying to help me apply for disability. She's trying to help me apply for Social Security, all of which deny. So this was literally, I knew when I kept getting denied for insurances, when I kept getting denied for disability, and when I kept getting denied for Social Security because I couldn't work, I was going through this whole process, I knew that I had to completely trust God, that I had to give everything that I had and completely trust God. And then I knew that I was going to be like a fish in a fishbowl where everybody was like watching to see how I act, or watch to see what how God was going to work next, or if God was really going to work, because there's some of you that, totally, say there is no God. And so I had to show without a doubt, no matter how hard it got with me and what we were going through, that I was giving complete trust and faith in God. And so anyways, I go through my surgeries, have to pay for everything out of pocket. This is thousands and thousands of dollars, okay? So then we have these surgeries, and now we're back to, I'm going to see the oncologist and radiologist. And so I was on all these vitamins, this whole regimen of all of this stuff prior to going to see my oncologist and radiologist that they had an appointment for. So my first appointment was with the radiologist. So I go in there and I have an open mind because, you know, I don't want to go in there and completely say, you're wrong, I'm right, I'm not doing this. So I went in with an open mind and I wanted to hear what the radiologist had to say. So I go in and I talk to the radiologist. They want to put me on this massive treatment plan of having radiation treatments. And so my question to the radiologist was, there's people out there that have worked in like chemical plants or different factories that got exposed to massive amounts of radiation, and it really messed them up. So I asked him, I'm like, what makes these radiation treatments different than somebody getting exposed to radiation and then being messed up? And he's all, well, we just go and we target like the specific area. And I'm like, but yet you're still putting radiation in someone's body, which radiation is bad. And so he kind of hem-hawed around, you know, my question. And so I told him, I'm like, I can't see myself doing this. I'm like, I'm trusting God to get me through this. And I know that you guys think that I need to have radiation, but I'm actually going to decline. And he kind of got upset with me, and he was like, you know, he was like, well, I'm a believer in God, but how do you know God isn't telling you to do this? And that's when I told him, how do you know God isn't telling me not to do this? And so he pulled out, which a couple of people in my journey told me this, that God gave the gift to doctors that they have. And I was like, okay, you know what, you're right. The gift that doctors have is truly a gift from God. But when a doctor takes that gift and uses it in vain, it is no longer a gift from God. It's actually a man-made quest to make money. And so I have never, in this journey that I've been on, I've never seen anything good ever come out of somebody having radiation. And so, you know, when he said that to me about, you know, I just thought, you know, that was kind of arrogant in a sense, you know, that he would think that his treatment was the only treatment that was going to help me. And it's like he was almost excluding God. He put God in there, but it was almost like he was excluding him. And so I told him, I said, you know, I appreciate you taking the time to tell me about radiation and what you think it might do. And I asked him about the side effects, and there were so many side effects. And I thought, you know, this isn't what God has in store for me. And the whole time God's telling me, no, you cannot do this. No, you cannot do this. So I just told the radiologist, I'm like, you know, I appreciate you taking this time, but I said, I'm going to decline having radiation. And then he proceeded to tell me that if I didn't do his treatment, that if I didn't go through with this, that my cancer was going to come back. It was a good chance my cancer was going to come back. And if my cancer came back, then it was going to come back more aggressively, and they weren't going to be able to help me. So then that's when I came up and I'm like, okay, hold on a second. I'm like, cancer is cancer. So I said, whether I have cancer in my breast or my cancer comes back and I have it in my pancreas or my stomach or my liver or whatever, I'm all, why is it that you can help me with this cancer with radiation, but you can't help me with cancer if it comes back? And he honestly didn't know how to answer me. And so I just told him, I said, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, but I said, I'm going to decline. I said, I'm going to trust that God gets me through this. So about a half hour later, I have an appointment with the oncologist. And so the oncologist comes in. He's a younger guy, and no bedside manners whatsoever. So he was sitting there explaining to me how they wanted to put me on this huge regimen of chemo treatments. And I'm looking at him thinking, my gosh. And so I started asking him about the side effects of chemo. And he's all, well, you're going to lose your hair. You know, it could make you very sick and all of this stuff. And I'm like, so you're gonna, I'm already sick as it is, so you say, with cancer. I said, so now you're gonna stick this chemical in me that's gonna make me even sicker. And I said, what about my immune system? And he's all, well, it's gonna affect your immune system drastically. He's all, you're gonna find yourself being very tired, lethargic. And I'm sitting here the whole time going, this is crazy. And I was telling him, I'm like, well, I'm on this vitamin regimen that's really been helping me. And he's all, well, you have to stop all your vitamins if you do chemo. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, my vitamins and the regimen that I'm on are helping me and building up my immune system and helping me. I'm all, you have to understand, I'm like, I never get sick. Even though I have cancer, and you guys have found cancer, and you tell me this is an aggressive cancer, and it could have all these effects on my body, I'm like, I never get sick. And I'm like, that is credit to God and my diet and the vitamins that I'm taking. And I said, now you're telling me I have to completely stop taking my vitamins and, you know, stop doing the regimen that I've been doing, so I can do chemo, so chemo can break down my immune system, so I'm vulnerable to getting sick. I'm gonna lose my hair. I'm gonna feel miserable. And I said, so for what? For what reason? And he's all, well, taking the vitamins can affect the chemo. And I'm thinking to myself, that makes no sense to me, that you're gonna pump me full of this chemical, but yet you want me to stop doing everything that's good for me. And I'm like, statistics, what are the statistics? And my husband's asking, what are the statistics of somebody that does chemo? And he's all, the remission part, statistically, here is the statistics. And he's showing us statistically remission of 5 to 10 years. Okay, so everybody understands, remission is not cured. That is just cancer hiding itself somewhere else in your body, waiting to pop its nasty little head up. And so I'm like, so this is a 5 to 10 year rate. And so my husband's like, well, what's the survival rate or the remission 15 years or 20 years from now? Statistically, he didn't have those statistics. And that's because, I'm going to tell you people right now, it is almost proven, almost guaranteed, that if you get cancer and you have chemo and radiation, it is almost guaranteed that your cancer is going to come back between 5 to 10 years. And it's going to pop its head up somewhere else in your body. And so whether you have chemo one time or you have a whole regimen like they wanted to set me up, it is almost guaranteed that it's going to come back 5 to 10 years later. And so there are cases where people have had chemo and radiation where they had, their cancer never came back. And that's because these people wised up, researched, and got themselves on a good nutrition plan. They got themselves on a good vitamin regimen. They started exercising. They started changing their lifestyle. You know, and it's not that their body wasn't damaged from chemo or radiation, because your body, without a doubt, is going to be damaged from having chemo and radiation. That it will never be the same again. But those people that you hear about 20 years ago that got cancer and they've been cancer free, for 20 some years isn't because of chemo and radiation. That's because they chose to change their lifestyle, and that's their diet. That's the vitamins they're taking. And so here this doctor is telling me all of this stuff, and I'm telling him about my vitamin regimen. Well, then he starts pulling up statistics on how many people who are healthy that get cancer, and it's because they take antioxidants. And he's all, these antioxidants, and before he could finish, my husband and I are like, because they're synthetic. And people, when you're taking vitamins, please research, because you think you're doing so good for your body, but you need to be reading the back of labels. That's what I said. You guys need to be researching and seeing what you're putting into your body, because a lot of times you guys are taking these vitamins and these antioxidants and they're synthetic, and your body cannot process synthetic. It cannot. And if it's making you feel good for a brief time, that's a false euphoria. And so here now your body's trying to push out all this synthetic crap that you're shoving in there. And here this doctor's saying, well, look what your vitamins are doing. And I'm like, well, yeah, because those are synthetic vitamins. You know, so he was trying to debunk the vitamins and stuff like that. And, you know, I told him, I said, you know, through all of this, I said, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, but I said, I'm going to listen to God. I'm going to pray to God. This isn't where God wants my story to end. I said, I'm going to do this God's way and natural. This doctor, I'm not kidding you, had the audacity to tell me there are no such thing as natural cures. And I was floored, absolutely floored. I couldn't believe that this doctor actually told me this. And that right there, I was like, you know what? Thank you, but I'm going to do this God's way. And so I left there and I was in such shock. And I remember crying, and I was telling my husband, and I was praying to God. I was, God, please, please use me. Help me to help people see the truth, that they don't have to go through this, that they don't have to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to be pumped full of a chemical on a maybe that they're going to be cured, on a maybe that their cancer is going to go on remission, on a maybe that this is going to be the end of this battle with cancer and they could go on with a normal life. I'm like, please use me as a vessel to help other people. And so I just prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And, you know, I left there and I was like, where do I go from here? And so it was crazy in my prayers to God, how God was opening up these doors in different directions for my treatments and for the cures to help with what was going on with me. And, you know, different, not diets, but different nutrition paths. And so in this journey, and we started praying, I had different people from Facebook emailing me when I started posting what was going on and the decision that I made and everything like that. It's crazy because several years ago, I had heard of the biomedical facility in Mexico. And so I had got a couple of emails about this facility. And so I had told my family about it. And so we're like, okay. And then I had people and friends from Australia sending me stuff with the research that different doctors have done in Australia with a plant that was helping wipe out tumors and helping wipe out cancer. And so I prayed to God and I'm like, okay, God, I have a fork in the road. I need you to help me in the right path, in the right direction, go as far as treatment. But I said, Lord, I want this to be to where I can afford it, but if somebody else comes in my path, that they can afford it and they're not going to be scrambling around trying to figure out how to pay for their medical costs. And that was something that was huge for me, is that I wanted to do this, that people weren't going to go, the only way I can survive is if I get insurance and go through chemo, because that's the only way that I'm going to be able to afford to save my life. So I told God, I need you to help me find the right path, not just so my family and I can afford my treatments, but so somebody else can afford to go through treatments and to survive and to live. And so I'm going to pause right there. And tomorrow I will be speaking with you on my different routes for treatments. And so today I'm actually I'm driving 4 hours to go to treatment that I continue doing every week. And I will actually post a video and give you guys an up close and personal video on a treatment that I do that has really helped, not just with my cancer, but with my Lyme's disease. So I love you guys. I want you to keep faith. I want you guys to pray and never give up hope.